Marcus Johnson had always been a fighter. Born and raised in the heart of Chicago, his life was anything but easy. From the moment he entered the world, challenges seemed to stack up against him like towering walls. Marcus was born with cerebral palsy, a condition that affected his ability to walk without assistance. For most of his life, he relied on crutches to get around. Every step he took required effort, balance, and determination, qualities that became second nature to him over time. Despite these physical limitations, Marcus faced another set of hurdles outside his body, the prejudices of society. Growing up as a black man in a city where systemic racism often cast long shadows, Marcus learned early on how to navigate a world that wasn't always kind or fair. People sometimes stared at him when he walked down the street, their eyes lingering on his crutches or the way his legs moved differently. Some whispered behind his back, while others crossed the street to avoid passing too close. But Marcus didn't let those moments define him. Instead, he chose to rise above them, focusing on what truly mattered: his character, his values, and the love he shared with those around him. In his neighborhood, Marcus was known for his warmth and generosity. He greeted everyone with a smile, whether it was the elderly woman who lived across the hall or the kids playing basketball by the curb. If someone needed help carrying groceries or opening a stubborn door, Marcus was there, offering his assistance without expecting anything in return. His kindness made him stand out, even in a community full of good-hearted people. Neighbors often said that Marcus had a way of making you feel seen, no matter who you were or what your circumstances might be. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Marcus was heading home after running errands at the local grocery store. It was one of those crisp autumn days where the air carried just enough chill to remind you winter was on its way. The leaves had turned shades of orange, red, and gold, scattering themselves across the sidewalks like confetti. Marcus carefully navigated the uneven pavement, his crutches tapping rhythmically against the ground. Each step required focus, but he'd grown used to it over the years. Walking was slower for him than for others, but he didn't mind. He liked taking his time, observing the little details of the world around him, the laughter of children, playing tag, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional bird flitting between tree branches. As Marcus approached a small park near his apartment building, something unusual caught his attention. At first it was faint, a sound almost drowned out by the rustling leaves in the breeze. But as he drew closer, the noise grew louder, more urgent. It was the sound of screaming. High-pitched and desperate, it sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. Without thinking twice, he adjusted his grip on his crutches and moved toward the source of the commotion. His heart pounded in his chest, but he pushed aside any fear or hesitation. Something inside him, an innate sense of responsibility, told him he couldn't ignore it. The park was quiet, save for the occasional jogger or parent pushing a stroller. As Marcus rounded a cluster of trees, the scene before him stopped him in his tracks. A young boy, no older than 8, was crouched on the ground, tears streaming down his face as 2 large dogs circled him menacingly. Their growls filled the air, low and guttural, sending chills through anyone who heard them. The boy's tiny hands clutched at his jacket, trying to shield himself from the animal's snapping jaws. His cries for help echoed through the park, pleading for someone, anyone, to come to his rescue. Marcus froze for a split second, his mind racing. He knew the risks. These dogs were big, powerful, and clearly aggressive. What could he possibly do? His mobility was already limited. If he fell or got knocked over, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. Yet as he stood there watching the terrified child, another thought pushed its way to the forefront of his mind. What if no one else comes? The idea of standing idly by while a child suffered was unbearable. Marcus tightened his grip on his crutches, steeling himself for what he was about to do. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Hey!" he shouted, waving his arms to catch the dogs' attention. They turned toward him, their snarls intensifying as they locked onto this new target. Marcus swallowed hard, his pulse racing. This was it. There was no turning back now. Using his crutches like makeshift weapons, Marcus swung them wildly at the dogs, forcing them to retreat a few steps. His movements were awkward and uncoordinated, but they were effective enough to create some distance between the animals and the boy. One dog lunged at him, teeth bared, but Marcus managed to strike it squarely on the nose with the end of a crutch. The dog yelped in pain and stumbled backward, giving Marcus a brief moment of relief. The other dog hesitated, its tail tucked between its legs as it weighed its next move. Sensing an opportunity, Marcus kept shouting, his voice loud and commanding, hoping to intimidate the animals further. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the dogs decided they'd had enough. With one last growl, they bolted off into the distance, disappearing into the trees. Marcus exhaled sharply, his body trembling with adrenaline. Lowering his crutches, he slowly made his way over to the boy, who was still huddled on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Kneeling beside him as best he could, Marcus placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now." For several minutes, Marcus stayed with the boy, comforting him until the sound of approaching sirens signaled help was on the way. Paramedics arrived soon after, along with police officers who quickly secured the area. As they tended to the shaken child, Marcus quietly slipped away, disappearing into the crowd that had gathered. He didn't stick around for praise or recognition. To him, it was simply the right thing to do. Little did he know, however, that his actions that day would ripple far beyond the confines of the park, touching lives in ways he could never have imagined. The moment the paramedics arrived, Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. The boy, still shaken but now in safe hands, was being carefully examined by medical professionals. His sobs had softened into sniffles, and though his face was streaked with tears, there was a glimmer of calm returning to his wide, frightened eyes. Marcus watched silently from a distance as the paramedics wrapped a blanket around the child's shoulders and asked him gentle questions about what had happened. One of the officers approached Marcus, thanking him for his quick thinking and bravery. But Marcus simply nodded, brushing off the gratitude with a quiet humility that seemed almost instinctive. Despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins, Marcus couldn't help but feel drained. His arms ached from swinging the crutches like makeshift weapons, and his legs, already strained from years of living with cerebral palsy, felt heavy and unsteady. Still, he stayed until the boy was loaded into the ambulance, ensuring that everything was under control before quietly slipping away. He didn't want attention or praise, he just wanted to go home, sit down, and process what had just happened. As he made his way back toward his apartment, the events of the day replayed in his mind like a loop he couldn't escape. By the next morning, however, Marcus realized that escaping notice wasn't going to be an option. News of the incident spread quickly throughout the neighborhood. Witnesses who had seen Marcus step in to save the boy began sharing their accounts online, posting videos and photos they'd captured on their phones. Within hours, social media platforms were buzzing with stories about the disabled hero who risked his own safety to protect a child. Some posts included grainy footage of Marcus wielding his crutches against the dogs, while others featured heartfelt messages praising his courage. The story resonated deeply with people, not just because of the dramatic rescue itself, but because it highlighted the humanity and selflessness of someone many might have overlooked. Local news outlets picked up the story soon after, amplifying its reach far beyond the boundaries of Marcus's Chicago neighborhood. Reporters flocked to the park where the attack had occurred, interviewing bystanders and piecing together details of the event. They described how Marcus, despite his physical limitations, had fearlessly confronted two aggressive dogs to save the young boy. Headlines called him the crutch-wielding guardian, a title that stuck almost immediately. Journalists painted vivid pictures of the scene, emphasizing the sheer determination and strength it must have taken for Marcus to intervene. One reporter even managed to track down Marcus at his modest apartment building. When she knocked on his door, Marcus was caught off guard. He hadn't expected anyone to come looking for him, let alone a journalist with a camera crew in tow. At first, he tried to decline the interview, insisting he didn't do anything special. "I just did what anyone would have done," he said, shaking his head. But the reporter persisted, explaining that his actions had inspired countless people across the country. Reluctantly, Marcus agreed to speak briefly, though he insisted on keeping things simple. Sitting in his small living room, surrounded by mismatched furniture and shelves lined with books, Marcus recounted the events of the previous day in his own words. "I heard the screaming," Marcus explained, his voice steady but soft. "And when I saw those dogs circling that little boy, well, I knew I couldn't just stand there. I mean, what if no one else came? What if something worse happened?" He paused, glancing down at his hands, which were clasped tightly in his lap. "I wasn't thinking about myself or whether I could handle it. All I thought about was getting to that boy and making sure he was okay." His words struck a chord with viewers. There was something profoundly relatable about Marcus's explanation. His refusal to see himself as extraordinary, his insistence that he was simply doing what needed to be done. For many watching at home, Marcus represented not just a hero, but a reminder of the goodness that exists within ordinary people. Social media erupted with comments praising his humility and courage. Strangers from all over the country chimed in, sharing their admiration for a man who put himself in harm's way without hesitation. Memes and hashtags dedicated to Marcus popped up everywhere, turning him into an overnight sensation. But perhaps the most emotional response came from the boy's family. Ethan, the child Marcus had saved, was reunited with his parents shortly after the attack. His mother, Lisa, and father, James, were overwhelmed with gratitude, not only for their son's survival, but also for the stranger who had stepped in to protect him. When they learned Marcus's name and saw images of him online, they reached out immediately, desperate to thank him personally. A local news station arranged for the families to meet during a live broadcast, capturing the moment on camera for everyone to see. When Marcus walked onto the set of the morning show, leaning slightly on his crutches, the audience erupted into applause. He looked visibly uncomfortable under the spotlight, shifting awkwardly as the host introduced him. Then, the doors opened, and Ethan ran out, followed closely by his parents. The sight of the little boy throwing his arms around Marcus brought tears to the eyes of everyone present. Ethan hugged Marcus tightly, burying his face in the man's chest as if afraid to let go. Marcus smiled softly, patting the boy's back with one hand. It was a tender, genuine moment, one that transcended words. Lisa stepped forward next, her voice trembling as she addressed Marcus directly. "We can never repay you for what you did," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "You saved our son's life. You risked your own safety to protect him, and we'll never forget that." James echoed her sentiments, adding, "If it weren't for you, Marcus, we might have lost Ethan that day. We don't know how to thank you enough." Marcus listened quietly, his expression thoughtful. When it was his turn to speak, he hesitated for a moment, clearly moved by the raw emotion in the room. "I'm just glad Ethan is okay," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's all that matters to me." His simplicity and sincerity only added to the impact of the moment. The audience erupted into applause once again, this time louder and more heartfelt than before. As the segment wrapped up, the host turned to Marcus and asked if he had any final words for the viewers. Marcus thought for a second, then leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. "I guess I just want people to remember this. We're stronger together. No matter who you are or what challenges you face, you can make a difference. And sometimes, the smallest actions, the ones that seem insignificant, can change someone's life forever." His message resonated deeply, leaving a lasting impression on those who heard it. By the end of the broadcast, Marcus's story had touched millions of hearts, sparking conversations about kindness, resilience, and the power of community. What started as a single act of bravery in a quiet park had grown into something much bigger, a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. And though Marcus never sought recognition, he found himself thrust into the spotlight, becoming a symbol of hope and inspiration for people everywhere. The whirlwind of attention that followed Marcus's heroic act was unlike anything he had ever experienced. In the days after the incident, his story dominated headlines across the country. Local news stations replayed footage of the rescue, while national outlets picked up the narrative, amplifying it to an even wider audience. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like Real Life Hero and Marcus the Guardian, as people shared their admiration for a man who risked his own safety to save a child. Strangers from all walks of life sent messages of gratitude, many expressing how Marcus's actions renewed their faith in humanity. At first, Marcus tried to keep a low profile. He turned down most interview requests, preferring to stay out of the limelight. But the sheer volume of support he received made it impossible to ignore. Packages began arriving at his apartment, letters, gifts, and heartfelt notes from people he'd never met. Some included drawings from children inspired by his bravery, while others contained prayers or words of encouragement. One letter, written by a young girl with cerebral palsy, stood out among the rest. "You showed me that I can be brave too," she wrote. "Even if things are hard, we can still help people." Reading those words brought tears to Marcus's eyes. For the first time, he realized that his actions weren't just about saving Ethan. They were also about inspiring others to believe in themselves. The emotional weight of the situation wasn't lost on Marcus. While he appreciated the kindness pouring in from strangers, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't deserve so much praise. After all, he reasoned, anyone would have done the same thing if they'd been in his position. Yet the overwhelming response suggested otherwise. Many pointed out that not everyone would have stepped forward, especially under such dangerous circumstances. What made Marcus's actions remarkable wasn't just his courage, it was his willingness to act despite the odds stacked against him. His disability could have easily been seen as a limitation, but instead he turned it into a source of strength, proving that true heroism comes from within. As the days passed, Marcus found himself reflecting more deeply on what had happened. He thought about the boy, Ethan, whose life he had saved, and the family who now owed him a debt they could never fully repay. Lisa and James, Ethan's parents, continued to express their gratitude openly, inviting Marcus to dinner and offering to cover any expenses related to his involvement in the rescue. Though Marcus politely declined their offers, he accepted their invitation to meet again. Over pizza and laughter, the two families bonded over shared stories and newfound respect for one another. Ethan clung to Marcus during the meal, clearly enamored with the man who had become his personal superhero. Watching the boy smile and laugh reminded Marcus why he had acted without hesitation that day. But the ripple effects of Marcus's bravery extended far beyond his immediate circle. Across the country, people started discussing issues that had long been overlooked. Disability advocates seized the opportunity to highlight the challenges faced by individuals like Marcus, people who navigate a world not always designed for them. They pointed out that society often underestimates the capabilities of disabled individuals, dismissing them as vulnerable or dependent. Marcus's story challenged those stereotypes, showing the world that physical limitations don't define someone's potential to make a difference. His courage sparked conversations about accessibility, representation, and the importance of creating environments where everyone feels empowered to contribute. Racial equity advocates also joined the dialogue, using Marcus's story to shed light on systemic inequalities. As a black man living in Chicago, Marcus had faced discrimination throughout his life, yet he chose to rise above it. His selflessness struck a chord with communities of color, reminding them of the resilience and dignity inherent in their struggles. People began sharing similar stories of everyday heroes in marginalized groups, individuals who, like Marcus, had overcome adversity to perform acts of kindness. These narratives helped foster a sense of unity and pride, encouraging people to celebrate the unsung heroes in their own lives. Amidst the outpouring of love and admiration, something unexpected happened. A wealthy philanthropist named Robert Langley stumbled upon Marcus's story while scrolling through social media late one night. Langley, known for his charitable work and passion for supporting underserved communities, was immediately moved by Marcus's humility and courage. He watched the footage of the rescue multiple times each viewing, leaving him more inspired than the last. By the third replay, Langley had made up his mind. He wanted to do something tangible to honor Marcus's bravery. Langley reached out to Marcus personally, arranging a private meeting to discuss his intentions. When Marcus arrived at the upscale cafe where they agreed to meet, he was nervous. He had no idea what to expect, nor did he understand why someone as influential as Langley would take an interest in him. But Langley put him at ease almost instantly, greeting him warmly and thanking him for setting such a powerful example. Then, without preamble, Langley revealed his plan. He offered to fund state-of-the-art prosthetic legs for Marcus, technology that would significantly improve his mobility and quality of life. The proposal left Marcus speechless. For several moments, Marcus simply stared at Langley, unsure how to respond. Part of him felt undeserving of such generosity. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice tinged with disbelief. Langley smiled, kindly, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Because you remind us of what it means to be human," he replied. "Your actions prove that compassion knows no bounds, and I want to give you the tools to live your life to its fullest potential." Though Marcus initially hesitated, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the offer, he eventually agreed. The decision wasn't easy. Accepting help wasn't something he was accustomed to, but after consulting with friends and family, he realized this was an opportunity to embrace change, not just for himself but for everyone who looked up to him as a symbol of hope. With Langley's support, Marcus embarked on a journey toward greater independence, beginning with consultations with specialists who would design custom prosthetics tailored to his needs. Throughout this process, Marcus remained grounded, refusing to let the attention go to his head. He continued to focus on the values that had guided him his entire life: kindness, humility, and perseverance. Even as his story inspired millions, he stayed true to himself, using his platform to advocate for causes close to his heart. Whether speaking at community events or participating in interviews, Marcus emphasized the importance of looking beyond appearances and recognizing the worth in every individual. His message resonated deeply, touching lives in ways he could never have anticipated. By the time the prosthetic legs were ready, Marcus had already transformed in ways that went far beyond physical mobility. He had become a beacon of hope, a living testament to the power of courage and compassion. And though the road ahead promised challenges, Marcus faced them with the same determination that had defined him since childhood. Whatever lay in store, one thing was certain: Marcus Johnson's story was far from over. The journey to receive his prosthetic legs was both exciting and daunting for Marcus. When the day finally arrived to begin fitting and testing the advanced technology, he felt a mix of emotions: hope, apprehension, and gratitude all swirling together in his mind. The specialists tasked with creating his custom prosthetics were some of the best in the field, experts who had worked with cutting-edge advancements in mobility devices. They explained the process to Marcus step by step, ensuring he understood how the prosthetics would function and what to expect during rehabilitation. At first glance, the prosthetic legs looked almost futuristic. Sleek carbon fiber frames supported joints designed to mimic natural movement, while sensors allowed the legs to adapt to different terrains and speeds. These weren't just ordinary prosthetics. They were engineered to provide unprecedented freedom and independence. For someone like Marcus, whose mobility had been limited for decades, the idea of walking without crutches seemed almost surreal. But as impressive as the technology was, it came with a steep learning curve. Mastering the use of the prosthetics required strength, patience, and an unwavering commitment to physical therapy, a challenge Marcus accepted wholeheartedly. Physical therapy sessions became a central part of Marcus's daily routine. Each session started with stretches to prepare his muscles for the demands of using the prosthetics. Then came the grueling exercises, balancing on one leg, practicing small steps, and gradually increasing the distance he could walk. At times, the process felt frustrating. There were days when Marcus stumbled more than he succeeded, falling repeatedly despite the therapist's encouragement. His body ached from exertion, and there were moments when doubt crept into his mind. What if I can't do this, he wondered silently. What if I've come this far only to fail? But every time those thoughts surfaced, Marcus reminded himself why he had agreed to take this step in the first place. It wasn't just about him. It was about showing others that no obstacle is insurmountable if you're willing to keep trying. He thought about Ethan, the little boy whose life he had saved, and the countless people who had drawn inspiration from his story. Giving up wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. With renewed determination, Marcus pushed through the pain, celebrating even the smallest victories along the way. One particularly memorable breakthrough occurred during a session when Marcus managed to walk 10 consecutive steps without assistance. His therapist, Sarah, clapped enthusiastically, her smile lighting up the room. "You did it!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with pride. Marcus grinned back, though his legs trembled under the effort. For the first time in years, he stood, upright without relying on crutches or walls for support. It was a moment of pure triumph, one that left him breathless, not just from the physical strain, but from the overwhelming sense of accomplishment. As weeks turned into months, Marcus grew stronger and more confident. Walking became less of a struggle and more of a second nature. He practiced navigating various surfaces, grassy parks, uneven sidewalks, and even stairs, until he felt comfortable enough to venture out on his own. Friends and family marveled at his progress, cheering him on every step of the way. Lisa and James, Ethan's parents, frequently checked in to see how he was doing, often bringing Ethan along for visits. The bond between Marcus and the boy had only deepened over time. Ethan looked up to Marcus not just as a hero, but as a role model, someone who taught him that bravery comes in many forms. With his newfound mobility, Marcus decided to revisit the park where everything had changed. It was a symbolic gesture, a way of closing one chapter of his life while opening another. On a crisp morning, armed with his prosthetic legs and a heart full of resolve, Marcus made his way to the same spot where he had confronted the dogs months earlier. As he walked along the familiar paths, memories flooded back. The sound of Ethan's screams, the snarls of the dogs, the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he swung his crutches. This time, however, the scene was peaceful. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing through the air, and joggers nodded politely as they passed. Standing beneath the cluster of trees where the rescue had taken place, Marcus took a moment to reflect. He thought about how far he had come, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. That single act of courage had set off a chain reaction, touching lives across the country and inspiring conversations about resilience, kindness, and human potential. And here he was now, standing tall, literally and figuratively, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Word of Marcus's transformation spread quickly, thanks in part to Robert Langley, who continued to champion his cause. Langley arranged for Marcus to share his story at a national conference focused on disability advocacy and innovation. Standing before an audience of hundreds, Marcus spoke candidly about his journey, from the challenges of living with cerebral palsy to the fateful day in the park and beyond. He described the emotional highs and lows of adapting to the prosthetics, emphasizing the importance of perseverance and community support. By the end of his speech, the crowd erupted into applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation. The conference marked a turning point for Marcus. No longer content to simply live quietly in the background, he embraced his role as a public figure, using his platform to advocate for marginalized communities. He partnered with organizations dedicated to improving accessibility and inclusivity, speaking at schools, community centers, and government hearings. His message was simple yet powerful. Everyone deserves the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their circumstances. Through his words and actions, Marcus inspired countless individuals to dream bigger, push harder, and believe in themselves. Despite the whirlwind of attention, Marcus remained humble. He often joked that he still couldn't believe how much his life had changed since that day in the park. What started as a split-second decision to step forward and protect a child had grown into something far greater than he could have imagined. Yet amidst all the accolades and achievements, Marcus never lost sight of what truly mattered: making a difference, one person at a time. And so, as he stood in the park that morning, taking in the beauty of the world around him, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he also knew he wasn't alone. The love and support of friends, family, and strangers alike had carried him this far, and he intended to pay it forward in every way possible. For Marcus Johnson, the future was bright, and he was ready to walk boldly into it. Months passed, and Marcus's life had transformed in ways that seemed almost miraculous. The prosthetic legs, once foreign and challenging to master, now felt like an extension of his body. Walking became second nature, and the confidence he gained with each stride was evident in everything he did. He could navigate the world more freely than ever before, climbing stairs without assistance, strolling through parks without worrying about uneven pavement, and even dancing at a friend's wedding for the first time in his life. These moments, though seemingly small, were monumental victories for Marcus. They represented not just physical progress, but also a reclaiming of parts of his identity that cerebral palsy had once taken away. But Marcus didn't stop there. His newfound mobility gave him a platform to inspire others on a much larger scale. Invitations poured in from all over the country, asking him to speak at events, conferences, and schools. At first, Marcus hesitated. Public speaking wasn't something he'd ever imagined himself doing, let alone excelling at. Yet, as he stood behind podiums addressing crowds of hundreds, or sometimes thousands, he realized that his story resonated deeply with people. It wasn't just about the rescue or the prosthetics, it was about resilience, perseverance, and finding strength in vulnerability. His words carried weight because they came from a place of authenticity. One of Marcus's most memorable speeches took place at a high school in Chicago. The auditorium buzzed with energy as students filled the seats, their curiosity piqued by the guest speaker who had captured national attention. When Marcus walked onto the stage, leaning slightly on his prosthetic legs for balance, the room fell silent. For a moment he simply stood there, taking in the sea of young faces staring back at him. Then, with a warm smile, he began to tell his story, not just the dramatic rescue or the prosthetics, but the years leading up to those moments. He spoke candidly about growing up with cerebral palsy, the challenges of navigating a world that often dismissed him, and the importance of staying true to oneself despite adversity. "I want you to know," Marcus said, his voice steady and heartfelt, "that your struggles don't define you. They shape you, sure, but they don't determine your worth. You have power within you, power to change your own life and the lives of others. All it takes is one decision, one moment of courage to make a difference." By the end of his speech, the entire auditorium erupted into applause. Students lined up afterward to thank him, many sharing personal stories of their own struggles and how his words had inspired them. One teenage girl approached him timidly, tears streaming down her face. She explained that she had been bullied relentlessly for having a stutter, and hearing Marcus talk about overcoming obstacles made her feel seen and understood. Marcus hugged her tightly, whispering words of encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," he told her, "and the world needs your voice." As Marcus continued to share his message, he became a symbol of hope for marginalized communities everywhere. Advocacy groups invited him to speak at rallies, urging lawmakers to address systemic inequalities affecting disabled individuals and people of color. Marcus used these opportunities to highlight issues close to his heart, improving accessibility in public spaces, increasing funding for disability research, and promoting racial equity. His advocacy work gained traction, sparking meaningful conversations and inspiring action. Lawmakers listened intently as Marcus described the barriers he and others like him faced daily. By putting a human face to these challenges, he helped bridge gaps between policymakers and the communities they served. Ethan, the boy Marcus had saved, remained a constant presence in his life. Their bond had grown stronger over time, evolving into a friendship that transcended age and circumstance. Ethan often visited Marcus, eagerly sharing updates about school, sports, and his dreams for the future. During one visit, Ethan proudly showed off a drawing he'd created for an art project, a picture of Marcus standing tall, surrounded by rays of sunlight. Beneath the image were the words, "My hero." Marcus chuckled softly, touched by the gesture. "You don't need heroes," he told Ethan gently. You've got enough courage inside you to be your own hero. Lisa and James, Ethan's parents, expressed their gratitude repeatedly, ensuring Marcus knew how much his actions meant to their family. They invited him to holidays, birthdays, and other milestones, treating him like an extended member of the family. For Marcus, these connections were invaluable reminders of why he had acted that day in the park. Saving Ethan hadn't just changed the boy's life. It had created ripples of positivity that extended far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. In addition to his advocacy work, Marcus found joy in mentoring others facing similar challenges. He partnered with local organizations to create programs aimed at empowering disabled youth, teaching them skills to navigate both physical and societal barriers. Whether helping a teenager learn to use adaptive technology or encouraging a young athlete to pursue their passion despite limitations, Marcus poured his energy into fostering resilience and self-belief. Watching these young individuals grow and thrive brought him immense satisfaction, reinforcing his belief in the power of community. Despite his busy schedule, Marcus never lost sight of the values that defined him: kindness, humility, and gratitude. He continued to greet neighbors warmly, offer help whenever possible, and celebrate the successes of those around him. His apartment became a hub of activity, filled with laughter, conversation, and shared meals. Friends joked that Marcus's home was the happiest place in the neighborhood, a testament to his ability to bring people together. Years later, when reflecting on his journey, Marcus often thought about the chain reaction set off by that single act of bravery. What started as a desperate attempt to save a child had blossomed into a movement, one that challenged stereotypes, inspired millions, and fostered unity across diverse communities. Marcus knew he couldn't take full credit for any of it. After all, he had simply followed his instincts, guided by compassion and a desire to do what was right. But he also recognized that his actions had sparked something bigger than himself, a reminder that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. On a sunny afternoon, Marcus returned to the park where it all began. This time, he wasn't alone. Ethan ran ahead of him, laughing as he chased after a soccer ball. Lisa and James sat nearby on a bench, chatting amiably while keeping an eye on their son. Marcus paused for a moment, taking in the scene. The park was alive with activity. Children playing, couples walking hand in hand, and elderly folks feeding birds by the pond. It was a picture of peace and harmony, a stark contrast to the chaos of that fateful day years ago. As Ethan raced back toward him, breathless and grinning, Marcus knelt down to meet the boy's gaze. "Remember this place?" he asked, gesturing to the trees surrounding them. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "This is where you saved me," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with admiration. Marcus smiled, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "No, buddy," he replied softly. "You saved me too. You reminded me what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself." In that moment, surrounded by love, laughter, and the beauty of everyday life, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment. His journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. And as he stood up, ready to continue walking forward, both literally and metaphorically, he knew the best was yet to come. For Marcus Johnson, the legacy of hope he had built would endure long after he was gone, inspiring generations to come.